All right. 3, 2, 1. And we're back again for another 2021 season preview. And I'll tell you what, if you want to talk about a team that's had its ups and downs over the last few years, this is the club. It's the Adelaide Crows. And when you talk about the Crows, you want to get Adelaide's best. They're Adelaide's team. And so we've got the man who's in charge of the single greatest Adelaide Crows podcast. And that is Rob from the CrowCast. Rob, welcome to LaceOut.
Oh, mate, you're very kind. You're very kind. I think we're probably still the number one Adelaide Crows podcast. There's a few of us around, and they're all really good. But I'm happy to take the mantle.
Look, they might be good, and they're probably going to be listening to this, and they're going to realise why you are the best after listening to this, because you have all the insights, all the knowledge, all the opinions that matter, and it is going to set Adelaide alight with how we're going to set this preseason preview up for this year too. But look, let's get things started, because I need a bit of a history lesson. We're in Melbourne over here, and we've every club's a little bit different, and I need to know, how does a club who makes a grand final in 2017 dominating everything up with the power stance and everything. And then literally 3 years later, end up with a wooden spoon in their back pocket.
Well, it's a very good question, Chris. And it took a bloody club review to try and work it out, because no other bastard could work it out. We certainly couldn't work it out. Look, I think, if you go back a few years, we'd assembled a pretty good squad. We'd rejuvenated the club with a new CEO, a new coach, Phil Walsh. Everything was going really well. And, and then we had that tragedy in 2015 with Walshy sadly passing away. And, that's a big thing for a club to go through. And most people don't realise that was on the back of Dean Bailey also passing away, who was a very valuable member of our coaching staff as well, and mentored a lot of players. He'd passed away earlier, like a few months prior. So there was a fair bit going on with the player group, and they steeled themselves through 2016 and 2017, and I think they got to the GF playing some really good footy through 2017. And I just think what we came up with in the end was there was a bit of fragility in the squad, and when things got a bit difficult in that grand final, I just think that was their limit. They didn't have the mental strength to be able to push through Richmond, really pushing back at them in that game. And I just think that was all they had to give, unfortunately.
Yeah. And then to top it off, someone thought it was a really good idea to go on a preseason camp, and that just took it to another level in itself too. Now, being a Melbourne supporter, we know about our preseason camps, or we just don't go on them. And I also can definitely relate to the Dean Bailey side of things too, as well too, because even though he was one of our coaches, just the way they went. If anyone can have a chance, Adelaide people or anyone listening to this, go and see his press conference when he resigned from Melbourne.
Oh yeah,
that was the true integrity of the
class
man
act
as well too. He had exactly a class act, and some people could definitely take a page out of his book. So when you top that off with the way that Phil Walsh passed away, and that's just a lot to take on board for a single football club. And you're right. Emotion can take you so far, but can also bring you down pretty quick as well too.
Yeah, you can look for a whole bunch of excuses, and that camp, the camp's been done to death. It's been overblown in certain sections of the media. Blokes like McClure and all that have got a fair run out of it. But there was some substance to it in terms of dividing the player group. It was a really bad read, I think, by the staff in terms of where the squad was mentally. But people have paid a price with their careers. We lost our coach, we lost our footy director. We've basically turned over our entire coaching staff now, and it in many respects that was a beginning of the end of that core group of people, players and coaches and administrators, to segue into what we're going to talk about in a moment. Despite the adversity, it's actually left the club in a really good position because everything is fresh and there's a lot of optimism around now in terms of where the Crows are heading over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Well, if we have a look at last year, just to sort of, tops and tails the whole thing, you had a 3-14 record, did end up 18th on the ladder. Riley O'Brien took out your best and first, which was a great result.
Yeah.
Matthew Nix had his first season, and it was you couldn't have asked for a more challenging first season a senior coach on a number of facets from a team perspective, but everything to do with the COVID side of things. That's just another layer of complexity that he had to deal with.
Yep.
But it almost looked like when the season finished, it was almost, I would say, I reckon Adelaide would have loved another 5 weeks of footy, I reckon, towards the end, because they just seemed to get that little bit of momentum, get some wins on the board, had some cohesiveness around them, and then unfortunately it just got to the end of the season.
Look, it was interesting. I in one respect, I agree with you because I think the results were starting to come in terms of, wanting to keep the season going. But I think that the squad in general was probably cooked by the end of it. We had a lot of young kids through the squad during the year, but they all showed something, and there were blokes that a lot of people were on the fence about and starting to lose faith in, like, say, an Elliot Himmelberg, who really turned a corner in the second half of that season and presented themselves as AFL quality. So you're dead set right. We got better as the season went on, and thankfully the club followed it up with a really good off-season, notwithstanding losing Brad Crouch, which I personally don't mind. Some Crows fans wouldn't have liked that outcome, but the way we conducted ourselves through the trade period and the picks that we picked up during the draft, if you had a look, I don't know whether you probably didn't see the internal trial footage that we had last week, but there's some fantastic talent that we got picked up in last year's draft. So it's all very positive.
And I think that's the thing that we need to look at. Like, if you look at the last, you lost, what was it, 13 games on the trot, and then you go and beat Hawthorn, GWS, and Carlton in the space of a 3-week window, and then you go down, obviously, to a rampaging Richmond, but only by less than 8 goals, which is not too bad because they were really picking up steam towards the end of the year. But,
absolutely.
But I think one of the good things to come out of it is exactly right. You did lose Crouch. You lost Rory Atkins as well to Cole Hardigan, obviously, all left because of free agency.
Yep.
No trades came into the club, which is the second club that I've spoken to so far. I think the other one being Fremantle didn't actually bring anybody in from a free agency perspective. Yeah. So that's okay if you're going to do that. But what you really did, you smashed the draft. Yeah, let's be frank. You absolutely smashed it. Like, you were stiff not to get the number 1 draft pick, just due to the whole academy bidding and all that sort of stuff too. And that's good to see that now has stopped for the next year, because Jamal Ugle, can't remember the last name, would have been a really nice fit for you. Yeah, Hugelhagen. But you picked up an absolute ripper in Riley Thielthorpe at number 2. Yep, you got Luke Pedler at 11. You got Baden Cook at 25. Sam Berry at 28.
Yeah.
So there's 4 ripping kids in the top 30.
Yeah.
James Rowell, 38. And then you also picked up Jackson Haitley as a rookie as well. And for the first time in a long time, you had 7 top 30 picks in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So it's okay to have people leave, but to get some quality youth through the club that's what you want to see. You need, especially when you're low.
Well, we needed
a new coach, new kids.
Yeah.
You're able to generate a cohesiveness amongst that entire unit, which is really good.
Well, we needed to, Chris, because Hamish Ogilvie is fairly well regarded in recruiting circles, but he'd probably had a few misses over the last couple of years. We had a draft that included a couple of lads that were questionable as first round picks. Ned McHenry and Jones. Jones have kind of struggled to make any sort of impact so far.
Yep.
And Darcy Fogarty is another who we picked up with a first rounder a few years ago and has struggled to find his feet. Jordan Gallucci and Miles Paholke are a couple that are now no longer on our list. So he had a few misses, and as a consequence, we were a bit thin in youthful talent. And it was a concern because we weren't able to regenerate. We brought in Harry Schomburg last year, who was a real good find. Will Hamill, Lockheed Scholl, obviously won a Rising Star nom. So we finally started to see Shane McAdam through a trade situation with Carlton. Finally started to see some youth coming through that we hadn't really seen in the previous years, and because of that we weren't able previously to regenerate our midfield and our key positions because we just didn't have the talent coming through.
Yeah, and you are exactly right with that. So if you did go back to 2018, you had Chase Jones, who's played 23 games since he started.
Yeah.
Ned McHenry's only played 8. Will Hamill's only played 8. Lachlan Scholl's only played 8. There's a couple others after that really haven't made much of an impact.
That's
2019, very, very, actually it's even worse, like Fisher McKaysey, who was your top pick at pick 6. Yeah, he's played 10. Schellenberg picked 8, but then Josh Worrell, 0. Ryan O'Connor, 0. Lachlan Gollins, 0. Ben Keys, who you picked up as a rookie, played the most out of that lot as well. And so it is good that you've gone that route, but they're more quality picks too, because one of the things that I was going to ask is one of the danger points that I saw is it's okay having a lot of youth, but you've got 11 players on your list that have played 100 games. 9 of those are over 28 years of age.
Yeah, and
that's
it is a concern.
That is the concern.
And they're not, and some of them you'd probably say are no longer playing at their peak either. There's real concerns over Tex Walker. There's concerns over Rory Sloane. Daniel Talia is rock solid, but starting to waver physically. Matty Crouch is still performing well, but can be a little bit fragile through the hamstrings and soft tissues and that sort of stuff. So our older players really are starting to fall off a cliff a little bit. And that's why it was so critical that we nailed last year's draft, because if we went through another draft with a few busts, that could have set us back another 2 or 3 years.
And you can't afford to have that, because as you can see though, but there's other teams that have gone down the youth route and it can bounce back pretty quickly. But the thing with the kids though, they need to have that support around them. And it sort of looks like at the moment they might have to, it's just hard to say it, bide their time for a year, because they don't have a large number of those bigger bodies at that sort of, what would I say, 100 to 150 game range to protect them as many other clubs would have, probably maybe an extra 5 to 10 of those on their list.
Yeah.
Where kids are going to have to be,
I think, though, if you look historically at the Premiers over the last decade or so, or even longer, 15 years, most of those teams have brought in a group of players either through consecutive drafts or through some good father-sons or what have you, and formed a nucleus over 1 or 2 years.
Exactly
and
right.
They've all come up together. They've all gone through the highs and lows together. They've melded as a team. They've had a consistency with their coaching staff. Not a lot of coaching changes in those premiership teams. A team like, for example, Western Bulldogs had 2 fantastic drafts and brought in Luke Beveridge, and it got him a flag. The Cats had a great stretch of father-sons as well as drafting. Hawthorn had a great couple of seasons in the draft, and then just were able to keep topping up their list with good plug-in players.
They nailed those trade periods.
Yes,
exactly right.
Exactly. So I think that's where the Crows are now. We're at the beginning of that cycle, and it's the first time in our history that we've bottomed out. We have traditionally been.
It's actually a fair point, though.
We've never bottomed out before. I think our lowest finish may have been 14th prior to that, but we've always been a team that has tried to be competitive and strive to make the 8. And unfortunately, you end up being stuck in that cycle where your squad's not quite good enough to go to that next level, but doesn't have enough currency at the trade or draft table to be able to regenerate the list enough to be able to push up. So, blessing in disguise last year to enable us, as you say, to have all those picks in the top 30 and to be able to really stock up, and also for the recruiting staff to be able to nail the picks that they had.
And I'll tell you what, you are a man who knows his football club. You are exactly right. I've just had a bit of a look up while you've been having a bit of a chin wag there, my friend. And you haven't finished lower than 14th in the entire history back in 1991. So we're talking 30 years of the Crows.
That's right.
That's not a bad place to be, and to not bottom out. It's almost a bit of the, and I said this to Ross on the North Talk podcast. They've been that sort of sat around the middle, so they don't get high draft picks.
Yeah.
But they don't bottom out, but they don't get enough to sort of go further. They're sort of stuck in no man's land. Yeah. So you either take the big jump like Geelong have almost done this year and put all the eggs in one basket, or you need to sort of, all right, flush out what we want to get rid of and build it up again. And that's what you've done this year. And I think that's a great decision that you've made.
Well, the biggest example of that is West Coast. If you have a look at their standings, they very rarely finish middle of the road. The amount of times that they've had a couple of lean years in between being really competitive and being flag contenders, you won't see West Coast finish 12th. You know, they'll either finish top 4 or 6, or they'll finish bottom 4. And as a consequence,
they're the opposite, aren't they? It's either tops or tails. There's none of this in the middle sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they can bounce back real quick because they're able to get all that talent through. And we've been the opposite, and I think it's been detrimental to us, to be honest.
Yeah, you're exactly right. They're consistently playing finals, or they're at the bottom. They don't sort of miss by a game or two. They're just, we're doing well, or we're just falling apart at the seams.
We're not interested. Yeah.
Exactly right. Now, you mentioned earlier, one of the players who won't be there next year is Brad Crouch.
Yep.
How much of an impact is it going to have on season 2021 not having him there as a support? Now, once again, from your perspective, I would love to hear what your perspective is on this, because it could be different to what other people might think.
It will be different to what other people think. I've not been a Brad Crouch fan for the last couple of years, and to my detriment, really, in terms of how my listeners feel about me and my fellow podcasters feel about me. But Brad's had an unfortunate career because he was an absolute gun as a 17, 18-year-old. He came to South Australia in that funny little mini draft thing that happened with GWS.
Yes, yep.
Played a season at West Adelaide and really, started to come on. And unfortunately just had terrible luck with soft tissues, and it coincided with a change in the Crows fitness staff that probably didn't do him any favours. But as a result, he no longer has that burst speed, which has turned him into a bit of an in and under. You'll notice that Brad's best games are when he's playing inside, getting the nut and dishing it out. But unfortunately, that's not the player that we wanted out of Brad. And we ended up with a lot of inside players. We had his brother Matt, we had Hugh Greenwood, we had Cam Ellis-Yeoman, all those inside grunt players, and we had no class on the outside, which is what Brad was really, picked for, as being that class outside player, inside out sort of player. So, I hope he has a really good back end of his career. I really do. I think St Kilda's not a bad choice for him. And I think he'll be, if he gets the right medical support with his hamstrings, I think he'll do pretty well. But I think in terms of the way our squad looks and what we needed, I think it's a win-win outcome for the Crows.
What did you get for him from a trade perspective, or was it a free agent?
We only got top of second round, which a lot of people were very disappointed about. And the club didn't really. We could have a 20-minute discussion on how the club handled that. They showed their cards way too early, and in the end, they didn't have any bargaining power, and they had to take what they were given, basically. But we ended up getting good players out of it. So not all was lost.
Well, you just mentioned about the club itself. We'll get onto the on-field stuff in just a moment, because there's lots of little things, getting the eyes excited for 2021 as we move in. But generally, are you happy with the off-field, the administrative side of things of the club? Because normally for a successful club, and we've seen this probably with Richmond as the A1, the apex at the moment, that if you can get your off-field side of things solid, working together, all going in the same direction, it tends to feel to the move into the on-field side of things as well. Mark Rasciuto's seemed to have been there for quite a long time now, etc. What's the general feeling over there about the administrative side of things for Adelaide?
Oh, look, I mean, I think they completely messed up their footy department. Unfortunately, they brought in a couple of blokes, probably recklessly. Brett Burton was brought in initially as a head of fitness, obviously an ex-Crows player, very close to Mark Rasciuto, but had basically failed at Brisbane. Brisbane went through a very bad patch in terms of results and also medically under his watch. But Rasciuto saw fit to bring him in as head of fitness, and that also coincided with us starting to have a very bad run with soft tissue injuries, and Brad Crouch was a classic there. Not only that, Brett brought Matt Haas with him from Brisbane. So we basically got rid of a guy called Nick Poulos, who's now, National Rugby Sevens fitness coordinator. Like Nick was fantastic. He's gone up in the world, and you've gone backwards. Yeah, and we got Brett and Matt, and nothing against those blokes personally. We've said plenty about those two blokes, so I won't put into that.
No, I haven't heard it.
But see, following that, Brett Burton was promoted to footy director, general manager, footy ops. No background. The only background he'd had administratively was the AFLPA president, which is more or less an honorary sort of thing. So we really struggled, and it smacked of jobs for the boys. It smacked of trying to cut corners in terms of footy club spend. And when you talk about what happened after 2017, those factors played a massive part. I mean, Brett Burton was the one who, along with Don Pike, came up with a camp idea and sourced collective minds who were really rank amateurs in that space, and it showed. And they did a lot of damage to the club as a consequence. And Jason Dunstall's review at the end of 2019, and what's happened since then, we've lost Brett Burton, or Brett Burton's been shown the door. Donny Pike was shown the door. Our senior assistant, Scott Campriali, left after 10,000 years as senior assistant, which many people were happy about. So, am I happy with the club? I'm happy with the club now.
That's fair enough. But you're allowed to be happy, and I think,
in 2019, we generated a petition because we were so unhappy with the club. That was part of the reason why the club initiated their review, because us, along with other podcasts and just the general Crows public, had just become so disillusioned with the way things were being run that it was a show of people power. We did force change collectively.
So. And you know what? And this is the thing that my biggest critique when it comes to the AFL, and I've said this many times on the LaceOut podcast, is that I'm so disillusioned with the AFL where they just take the members for granted. I believe. I just think that they're doing it in so many different ways. You know, they're changing rules for no apparent reason. They make no sense in what they do, etc. It's almost where you know, they want us for our revenue, but that's about it. They don't care for our opinion. And so to hear that a collective, not just yourself, but other podcast people over there have said, no, we're not standing for this anymore. And we've seen it through history. The Dogs did it. Richmond got through it. Melbourne and Hawthorn through the merger, where people power has stuck thin. Even from the Swans when they were going to bring in Terry Wallace and they decided to, okay, no, we're going to go with Paul Roos. People power will ultimately sway things. And for that to occur, I genuinely think that you are on the right path. Unfortunately, you're right. It sucks. You have to go through the crap at times.
Yeah.
But if that's what you have to go through to see the light, then you know what? This is going to be the light. So let's have a look at this. Okay, so for 2021, what excites you though? So looking at your list, I can see the smile on your face now because I can see the video.
Yeah.
We want to talk about the good things because the history's gone, all right? We can only focus on the future. So who's getting you a little bit excited about where do you think the improvement's going to come from this year?
Well, our midfield excites me. We've still got some old stages. We moved Rory Laird into the midfield last year to great effect, and many would say overdue. He was growing very stagnant across half-back, and he had a new lease of life running through the midfield. But it's the young lads. Harry Schoenberg could be anything. I'm willing to put my neck on the line and say that he's a future Brownlow medal prospect. He's an absolute bull. He's toned up, got rid of all his puppy fat. He may have, sophomore blues this year. It's his second season. You know how players struggle. But I think over the long term, Harry Schoenberg is going to be a premier midfielder in the competition.
Nice.
He really excites me. Lockheed Scholl, really silky player. We've started him off half-back, but I suspect he'll end up playing a lot of time on the wing and through the midfield for us. Fantastic foot skills, plays tall for his size, needs to bulk up a bit, but a bit of silk. We picked up Luke Pedler through the draft last season. Now Luke Pedler was Prince Alfred College first 18 captain. Flew under the radar of a lot of people, but he is an absolute bull, Luke Hodge-like, I would compare him to.
You hope so.
Maybe not yet the foot skills of Hodgie, but certainly his ability to get the ball and his ability to assert himself is very reminiscent. So, and there's Sam Berry has done really well since his in pre-season training and in the internal trial last week. Elliot Himmelberg up forward has really started to show himself as someone who can maybe make centre half forward his own. But I think the biggest excitement for me, Chris, is a bloke that probably no one over there has seen, who I'm happy to say initially I didn't think we'd take with our second pick. I thought we'd take Logan McDonald. But Riley Thielthorpe played on the wing in the internal trial. This guy is over 200 centimetres. And you would... not that he did a huge amount.
Boy can run.
Young kid. But there were times where you're watching this kid play and you think, who's this midfielder? Then you realise he's our 200-plus centimetre forward.
He's small for a midfielder at 200 centimetres these days.
Dude, this guy below his knees is fantastic. He doesn't play like... He's reminds me of Ben King in terms of his mobility and his ability overhead, but also his work at ground level. He's going to be something special. And I've eaten a bit of humble pie on him because I didn't think we'd take him. But having seen him since, I can see that he's going to be something special.
Humble pie is tasty. We've all had a slice of humble pie over the years.
Absolutely.
That's the best part about this job. But it's even better when you get to. But it's even better when you get to serve it up to somebody else as well too.
Right.
But that's good. There is some genuine, and you know what? I my other one that I'd be looking at is Matthew Nix as well too. It was like we said towards the end of the year, he was really starting to get. You could see the game plan coming together. They were really starting to play for each other. And now they've got another full preseason with another bunch of young kids coming through. That's going to make a young coach excited, and it's going to make a young list excited.
Well,
and that's what you want.
Chris, a lot of people overlook the fact that Nixie's come in as a first-year head coach into a team that is shit, and then he gets COVID. He doesn't get COVID personally, but he has to deal with COVID. So the club is running on the smell of an oily rag. We've got two.
So we got the shit list twice, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But since the end of last season, we've brought on Scotty Burns, we've brought on James Raleigh from Geelong, someone else that name escapes me right now. But all of a sudden, we've got a quality assistant coaching panel behind him. He grew as a coach, I think, as the players started to gel and buy in towards the end of the season, as you pointed out earlier, with regards to results. And certainly in the internal trials and the feedback that we've had from pre-season match sim and all the rest of it, everyone has bought into what Nixie has put on the table. And, with blokes like Scotty Burns and James Raleigh backing him up, there's all of a sudden we've gone from the worst, most inexperienced assistant coaching panel in general to one that's got a massive amount of experience, both playing and also coaching. So, another one you've got also there's your Nathan Van Berlo, who's moved into the midfield coach. That's who I was thinking of.
And if you want to take it one step further, you can't ask for anyone better to be teaching the rucks a little bit of craft is Matthew Clark.
Exactly.
Who ended up playing over 250 games for Brisbane, Adelaide and St Kilda.
And has coached 2 AFLW premierships.
Man knows his stuff too. So it's a nice group to be together as well too. So it's exciting things. It is really exciting. So, all right, if we flip it around to the other way, where are the concerns? Where's that? What's the elephant in the room, or where's that when you're looking to the side going, oh crikey, I can see that, but I don't want to acknowledge it.
I think we might struggle defensively this year. We lost Kyle Hardigan at the end of last season. Daniel Talia is rock solid. Many say probably should be the captain of the club, but he at times can be a little bit fragile. He's struggling with injury at the moment, and the stocks get a little bit thin after that. We've got Fisher Mackesy, who has shown little bits and pieces, but may have to step up this year. Another lad, Jordan Butts, who looks good but has had limited opportunities, so he's also very inexperienced. Our medium defenders look okay. We've got Tom Diday when he's fit, who is a champion in the making. Jake Kelly has been solid. We've got Brodie Smith running off halfback. We've got Wayne Miller looking really good, who'll run off halfback and through the midfield. We've got a young lad, Will Hamill. We've got Lockie Gallant. A few other youngsters that can run through there, but our tall defender stocks have me worried, particularly if we lose Daniel Talia at stages during the season. So you might see
you might get stretched. Yeah,
you might see the clubs playing 2 tools or 3 tools, like a Geelong, say, with bloody Cameron and
Hawkins.
That's going to stretch us. That's going to
stretch. Not just you. I reckon there's going to be a few clubs being stretched by those two. Let's call a spade a spade. I think there's going to be another 17 clubs that are going to find that combination a little bit difficult. Could you imagine when you're rocking down to that back line and you think, oh, fantastic! I've got the second best forward this year. That's right. And then now it's like I've got the second best forward. Shoot, I've got to pick up Cameron. You take Cameron. I'll take. Oh, hold on. No, you take. Oh, yeah. Who's the third? Or Twang? I've got an injury. It's going to be a challenge.
The third's Radigalia probably, and he's no slouch.
It's just getting worse. Yeah. I'll take Brian. I'll take Brian Myers or whatever. Yeah, I'll take the guy with the dreadlocks. Okay. Now, so you mentioned who your breakout star is going to be, which you said
Schoenberg
and Thielthorpe as well too.
Yeah.
Who do you think is going into their last season potentially with the club?
Look, I think most people would agree that Tex is the writings on the wall for Tex. He's presented really fit, so I don't think in Tex's mind he's ready to retire. And, he looked all right in the preseason. But, look, to be honest with you, I think at some stage the club is just going to have to make a call on Tex, because we've got young players that we really need to get. The player that has suffered most by Tex's longevity, I guess, is Darcy Fogarty, because they're quite similar players. They're lead-up players. They're hustle and bustle players. They both got beautiful long kicks. They play very similar roles in that forward line. And when Tex and Darcy are playing in the same team, Darcy is the one that looks lost, obviously, because Tex, being an ex-captain,
he's playing his spot,
more assertive and all the rest of it. So, whether by injury or design, I think this might be Tex's swan song this year. Tex Walker has been incredibly unlucky, because he got that knee injury against Carlton back when he was just starting to look like an absolute champion. And agility-wise and his ability to leap and change direction has never been the same since. And whilst he's still
that knee injury, that knee injury wasn't what stuffed his career up. Let's be honest. As soon as he got rid of that mullet, as soon as Samson shaved it,
that's true.
That stuffed everything up. You just don't do things like that.
No, that's true.
It's like changing your lucky pair of jocks.
It's a very fair call.
Yeah, no, that mullet was one of the best.
Yeah,
and then he got rid of it, and it's like, no, you don't do that.
It was like taking off the spoiler on a Formula One car. It's just not going to handle the same.
It literally was the thing out the back. So you've actually got that right. The back, you took off his back spoiler and just threw all the aerodynamics out of it completely altogether.
That's it.
So where do you see the Crows finishing up at the end of the year? Position wise on the ladder, where do you put them?
Look, I think we'll be a very competitive 14 to 16. I don't want us to finish too high, because there's a couple of lads in the draft coming up next year that I really like the look of.
If you want to know how to tank, mate, come and see my club.
Yeah,
we'll be able to help
right.
you out with that. Well, I'll give you some tips on that.
Yeah. Well, we caught the penalty for that. Poor old Bales got suspended. Once he was with us.
It was a farce, mate.
But yeah, 14 to 16, I think. But with some really promising performance. I think we'll get blown off the park a few times because of our defence. And depending on how blokes stand up in the midfield, there'll be times where we just won't be able to match it for class, because lads have been on the park for 5 minutes. So, but I think
exactly right.
There'll be certain matchups during the season, certain teams that we match up well with, and I think you'll see a certain style of play, and you'll see some individual brilliance, I guess, at times that will just make you think, yeah, they're on their way up.
Yeah, because if you look at the bottom six from last year's ladder, you've got yourself, North, Sydney, Hawthorn, Gold Coast, Bombers. Yeah. Right? Probably even could throw Fremantle, or maybe, Fremantle in there.
Yeah.
Like, if you put the Crows against any of those teams, I can't see anyone absolutely dominating you, because they're all going through similar sort of things. North are going through similar sort of things. Sydney, I just don't. Once again, they just keep doing what they're doing. They're just an anomaly up there.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hawthorn, I reckon, will go down even further than 15th. I think they're really getting long in the tooth at that top end.
Yeah.
Gold Coast are going to be the opposite. I think they might actually surprise a few and maybe climb a little bit. I
have been riding the Suns for 3 seasons, going, this season they've got a great squad, they're young, they've got a good coach now, all the rest of it, and they just keep bending me over and saying, no, not this year.
I think the difference, I think the difference, though, with them in the last couple of years, Stewie Dew's played a lot of the kids.
Yeah.
There's actually players who have wanted to go there to play football, not just get a retirement check.
Yeah.
They've picked up some absolute stunners in the last couple of years. King, Anderson, Rao. You got to think Rao will be another draft pick for them, because he only played 3 games last year.
Yeah.
So
people
he's
have forgotten about Matty Rao. He's an absolute star.
He's a star. It's been put previously. There hasn't been a footballer since almost Chris Judd who's come out of the junior series and being able to dominate games
out of the blocks. Yeah.
Out of the blocks, and he's got a man's body and a man's mind at such a young age. So if you can go 14 to 16, that's going to be a massive result. especially as the wonderful champion data have ranked your draw the second hardest out there. So you finish 18th and you get the 8th. I don't understand how that works.
I thought the AFL fixture was supposed to be in 3 segments to make it a bit more equal.
It's the haves,
the
have-nots, and the ones that we don't really worry about.
Basket cases.
And the basket cases. And so I don't know how they do it, but that makes absolutely no sense. How a team who's 18th should almost have the first easy draw, if that makes sense, and the other way, but it doesn't work that way. But we know and that's what I really loved about the footy last year. It was 17 rounds. You played each other one. It was the fairest draw that we've had.
Yep.
And now I like people who go, I want 22 rounds. It's never going to be fair where a team can play you guys twice in all respect. But then you'll have someone like St Kilda who has to play Port, Brisbane, as an example, Richmond twice.
Yeah. How does it work?
It doesn't work. So I think why I really liked last year is that every game really meant something. I'd like to see that stay.
I was actually kind of hoping that they realised that the rolling fixture with 5-day breaks would actually allow them to do 32 rounds if they really wanted to play every team twice.
Mm-hmm.
Because
34 rounds, exactly right.
Rounds. Yeah. Because clubs have shown that they can come up in 5 days. You know,
they can. It's probably the third game, though, third or fourth one after that they really start to struggle. If they're going to do that, though, they need to make the lists bigger.
Bigger, exactly. I agree with
that. They
need
to make the list bigger. They don't want to do that. They're trying to bring them back.
Yeah.
I think just get rid of all the preseason games. Just get rid of them and just look. I think that there's some appetite for it, but once again, the AFLPA would be just like, nah. Either that's right. It's too much on the players or you need to pay us more money.
Yeah, no,
that's
I agree.
Not going to happen as well.
Never mind.
All right. Couple other little things before I get your final opinion on the rest of the comp. Rory Sloane, where do you see him going this year? Because he's had a couple of rough ones as well, a little bit similar to Tex.
Yeah.
Captain of the club.
Yeah. Sloane's really he's struggled since we lost Dangerfield because I think Rory's strengths were gut running and the ability to get on the outside and really hurt teams, as well as his ability to get his own ball. But that's a lot easier when you're playing second fiddle to Patrick Dangerfield, who's just an absolute bull. And I think the expectations on Sloaney were probably a little bit high because I just don't think he's the type of player. When you talk about Sloaney, you talk about guts. You don't talk about class, and I think
I agree.
He was too easily tagged out and blanketed, and I think where we'll see Sloaney hopefully this year is playing more outside. Chuck him on a wing, run him off half back, maybe throw him up forward because he's very good overhead. I would. What
about half back? Do you reckon you could play him off half back?
Yep, absolutely. I would have
rotate him through half back.
I would have him maybe running around, swapping around with, say, a Brodie Smith, and little cameos up forward. If they continue to try and play him as the premier midfielder, it's going to shorten his career, and we're not going to get anything out of him. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Nick's plays him. Yeah,
I think clubs nowadays have to be a bit realistic with the players, and the players need to be more realistic as well. And say, listen, this is I'm not your first class. Like, Maverick had to have Iceman as his wingman.
Yeah,
he had to have Danger. Now that Danger's gone, he's like, well, all the pressure's on me now.
I'm sure Maverick had
that compounds. Yeah, but unfortunately, Goose passed away halfway through the movie, and then when they had to fight the Russians and so forth, he said, I'll never leave my wingman. He made that mistake early, and so,
I'm with you.
All that sort of stuff. Yeah. But we'll find out in the next installment, which is coming out. Top Gun Maverick will be out at all your favourite cinemas and streaming locations in the upcoming months as well. All right. Yeah. So let's take the Crow's hat off. Who do you think is going to be the Premier for 2021? If you've had a look at the sort of the framing from last year moving into this year, who do you think is going to take out the title at the end of the year?
Well, the head says Richmond are going to continue on their merry way because they haven't really lost anything. But it makes you wonder whether they're just going to implode a little bit with the backroom stuff that's going on. Whether they can survive the social stuff with Dimmer and all his toing and froing and a few other little bits and pieces.
Yep.
I still think they're the number one team in the comp. When they're on, they are unstoppable.
When they're on. Exactly right.
It'll be a matter of, but Brisbane, I think, are the smoky. I think the Lions showed a bit. I think they've lost a bit even though he's not coach. I think they lost a bit, that club, by losing David Noble to the Kangaroos. I think
certainly
he's underrated, David Noble. Certainly outside of those in the know, but I think the Lions have got a really talented list, and they probably played their GF in the preliminary last year.
Yeah,
and that was them done. But and then probably Geelong are the third one, just through talent. Like, we're waiting for Geelong to fall off the cliff.
We just want them to fall off that cliff.
I don't rate Chris Scott at all as a coach. I think he's absolute shit as a coach.
Hey, I get you. I tell you this, mate. Jump onto the Geelong episode of this, and they don't. They say throughout the year he's fine, but when he gets to finals, almost one trick pony sort of stuff.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
if it doesn't work, I got nowhere to turn.
Yeah,
There's too much of a history.
They've lost a bit down back as well, so they might be a little bit vulnerable down back. But if they get the combination of Hawkins and Cameron right, and they get another year out of Dangerfield like last year, and Selwood can keep going, etc., etc., they've just got to be around the mark just on talent alone. So I think it's going to be out of those three. That's my feel.
Yeah, I agree. I think I definitely look at the Brisbane side of things where, Sloan lost his wingman. Hipwood got a wingman in Joe Danaher. Now, if Joe Danaher can be fit and he takes the main mantle, Hipwood now rolls around onto the second best and allows him to play more of a freer game too. So I really hope that Brisbane, and that would just show that you can beat your bottom, everybody leaves, and if you get the right people at the club, you can turn things around really quickly and turn yourself into a destination. And that's what I really hope that Adelaide go around, because look, let's be honest, we're in Melbourne here, and we don't like Adelaide teams.
No.
But we do we don't like seeing clubs down the bottom. Like, I'd rather see another.
Make it Port Adelaide. Don't like Port Adelaide.
I can't, because if I don't like Port Adelaide, I will be doing this podcast every week by myself, and my co-host Jamie will do a runner somewhere else.
They're all up and about this year. They reckon they've got it signed up. I haven't even put them in my top four.
Nah, don't. I wouldn't. Who's going to take out a Brownlow, do you think, this year?
Yeah. Flip a coin.
It's going to be a midfielder. Forget about the other ends of the ground.
Probably. I reckon Paddy might fire up again. I reckon he might get another one.
Okay. Nice one. A couple of Matt Rouse in there as well too so far.
Yes, yeah, he'd be a smoky, but I reckon Paddy might have his tail up a bit.
I think the way that they finished. I think the way that they finished off, they could have been 4.5 goals up in that grand final before half time.
Yeah.
So they've got, and don't forget about Higgins joining that crew as well too. Isaac Smith on a wing, he'll have plenty of room to run. Yeah, like I said, they're putting all the eggs in the basket. They're going down in a blaze of glory. It's either going to be champagne showers or the house is going to burn down and they're going to have to start from scratch again, probably from a coaching perspective as well.
Yeah.
And a Coleman, let's have a look at a Coleman perspective, because that one is something that sort of slips under the radar. But is there anything that sort of, actually, I reckon he might have a standout year if everything goes to plan.
Jeez, it's hard these days. You can't go past Josh Kennedy simply because West Coast still play that style of game that makes him a bit of a focal point. You got Richmond, they play their forwards up a lot, so they share the goals around. You could imagine that Geelong, with the two blokes there, will share the goals around a bit.
Yep.
So yeah, I'll probably go Kennedy again, assuming he stays fit.
And that's the thing. He's over 30 now, so he's getting into his twilight years, but he can still kick his 40, 50 a year.
Exactly.
It's amazing that he got swapped for Chris Judd. Like, you just sometimes sit and imagine if he was at Carlton. The whole, And look, the last question I'll ask you before we wrap this one up, if there was one rule that you could just either change or get rid of in the AFL, and we're not talking about the man on the mark one because everybody's going to say that one.
Yeah.
If there was one rule that you could change or get rid of, and I've thrown this one ad hoc at you right now, what would it be?
Well, I'm going to cheat because I want to give you two. Can I?
Oh, give me two. Give me two.
I want to bring hands in the back because I think that was the simplest black and white rule for an umpire to judge ever. And now that we've gone back to, you can put the hands in the back, just don't push, I'm not about it. But if we could just clean up the incorrect disposal. Could we just clean up the incorrect disposal? Because it drives me crazy how teams like Geelong and Richmond and Western Bulldogs can get away with throwing the ball so much.
Last time I checked, it was dropping the ball.
Yeah,
incorrect
that's
disposal.
what I thought too. But
and it's interesting as you say that, because if you ever look at a couple of the scenarios from the women's games on the weekend, there were people not even making contact with the ball. And we're not saying missing it by a mil or two. They're missing it by half a foot, and it was just play on. And that's the infuriating sort of stuff that don't try and change rules. Just get the ones that you've got. Oh, it's an attempt.
Exactly.
Officiate the ones that you've got. Beautiful. Hey, excuse me. Rob, I need to know. So the listeners out here have listened to this beautiful season preview for 2021, and they're sitting back going, you know what? I listen to a lot of Adelaide Crows podcasts, but this guy's got something special about him. How can I catch up more about the CrowCast? So tell the listeners, when can they listen to the CrowCast? How can they find you?
Okay, so this year we do a live show streaming on audio and video on Sunday nights at 7:30 Adelaide time. So we stream on YouTube, so you can just search CrowCast on YouTube. You'll find us there. Or if you want to just listen to the audio feed, you can go to our website, aflcrowcast.com. We stream our live audio on our website and also through Spreaker for those people who know what that is. And all of them are available, both video and audio are available on demand, on all the platforms. All the podcast platforms and YouTube, etc. This year also we'll be posting a bit of extra stuff on YouTube just intermittently during the week too. So, but our main show on the Sunday nights at 7:30 is where you catch us. We're on Twitter, AFL Crowcast. We're not really on Facebook anymore, but that's Crowcast as well. So, if you search Crowcast on Google, I'm proud to say that our page rank is awesome.
Bloody high. Just say bloody high.
You'll find us somewhere, we'd love to have as many people along as possible. We also run a Discord server that you can access through our website. If you go to the live chat page on our website, you can hook into our Discord server without even downloading the app. So it's all happening with us.
And if you want to even take it one step further, listeners, and you want to give these guys a bit of support, they've also got their Patreon page, which I'll have links to as well, that you can get on and support them too, because they put the time, they put the effort, they love it for it. Any way that you can help your favorite podcast, look, go ahead and do it, because I can tell you now, we don't do it for the money. We do it for the love of the game, and we do it for the love of our club as well too. So if you can support them in any way. Now, just one bad news though, they won't be in any of your record stores. You can't find them on Disney Plus. There's no chance of them being on
Spotify as well.
They're not going to be on Netflix. They might have their own Amazon special. That's probably the only place that they haven't been. But look, Rob, you are an absolute star, my friend. Like I said, just the passion that you have for your club. You've been doing this. Geez, when did you say you started this in 2000?
This will be year number 7.
Yep. You only do it if you love your footy, mate. So it's as simple as that. And so, look, I have one last question I have to ask you, and it's simply this. Rob, from the CrowCast, how do you want your football?
I want my football fast and free and open.
And open? Yeah, and there's one other way you want it too.
Yep. Yeah. I need to have it lace out, mate.
He needs to have it lace out as well too.
Straight out in front.
Yeah, straight out.
Lace out. Darren Jarman, lace out.
Jarman. We still used to run around saying Jarman. Jeez, he was a champion. That's another conversation for another day. All right, listeners, there's your season 2021 preview with Rob from the CrowCast. Look, enjoy the year. I think you've got plenty of excitement to come, and just enjoy the football and just give those young guys a bit of patience, because you know what? They're doing their best, and I know that you'll be there supporting them through thick and thin. So enjoy the year, and that's it for your season preview.
Chris,
have a great night.
really appreciate you having us on. I'll shout out to Nikki and Macca, my cohorts that couldn't be here, but yeah, we'll certainly be pumping up the LaceOut podcast on our CrowCast as well, mate. So all the best for the season.
Oh, no, I really appreciate that, mate. Like I said, all us podcasters, we're all here for each other, and we love doing it. So it's a bit of man love going each way. So, you know what, listeners, get on board, and more importantly, just enjoy your footy, because that's why we do it every single week for you guys. All right, take care, and
Thanks,
tune in. All the best.
Very good. Cheers, mate. See ya.
Sensational. Yes. Awesome.
That was good.
So what I'll get you to do